What happened when a victim's son attacked his mother's killer? Let's go to Springfield, Massachusetts, where a hearing is taking place for the alleged serial killer, Alfred Gaynor. According to reports, Gaynor terrorized the city of Springfield, where he assaulted and brutally murdered 9 women between 1995 and 1998. He was finally arrested after his DNA matched evidence found at the crime scenes. During the hearing, sitting in the gallery, was Eric Downs, the son of one of Gaynor's victims. 3 officers surrounded Gaynor, but that wasn't enough to prevent what happened next.
Mr. Gaynor's being held in extreme conditions of confinement. He's being held without right to bail.
Without warning, Downs jumped over the barrier and charged at the defendant. Gaynor's sister tried to restrain Downs, but not before the grieving son managed to land one final blow. One of the officers escorted Gaynor to safety, while others tried to restore order in the courtroom. Eric Downs was later charged with assault and contempt of court. As for Gaynor, he eventually pleaded guilty to all the murders and was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. This is Dale Williams, 62 years old, who was facing murder charges in Youngstown, Ohio, in June 2017. At the time, Williams chased the car of his ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth Pledger Stewart, forcing her off the road and causing an accident. He then shot and killed the 46-year-old mother of 2. After his arrest, Williams pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and illegal possession of a firearm, facing the possibility of life in prison. During his sentencing hearing, the victim's 2 sons decided to take justice into their own hands. Anthony D., 30 years old, jumped over the table, dodged the security guards, and pulled Williams down by his feet. Shortly after, his brother, Jerome Stewart, 23 years old, ran to help him, and together they delivered a series of punches and kicks to the defendant while officers tried to restrain them. One of the officers even used a stun gun to control the situation. Williams was removed from the courtroom while wiping blood from his face. As for the victim's 2 sons, they were arrested and faced charges of assault, contempt of court, and obstruction of justice. As for Dale Williams, he was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, despite being brutally attacked by the sons of the woman he killed. What happens when a defendant gets shot in court? Let's head south of the border to São José do Belmonte, Brazil, where the trial for the murder of Francisco Calomariano de Moura, 38, was taking place. According to reports, in 2012, Moura shot and killed Francisco Alves in his home in Lagoa Alexandria after the two had argued over a donkey. Now, years later, the trial was underway. In the courtroom, the victim's son, Cristiano Alves Terto, 27, was sitting at the back of the room, while the defendant was seated at the front. But when Terto stood up, he was about to carry out a dark plan. At first, a woman tried to stop him, but Terto was determined. He pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and fired 2 shots at Mora, just a few meters away from a juror and a lawyer. The courtroom descended into chaos. The vengeful Terto continued his attack, firing more shots at point-blank range at his father's killer. Desperate, Mora tried to flee, seeking cover as bullets ricocheted around him. But Terto didn't stop there. After emptying his revolver, he used the gun's grip to repeatedly strike Mora. Amid the panic, the attacker fled the courtroom but was captured the next day and charged with attempted murder. Miraculously, Mora managed to stand up behind the judge's bench before collapsing to the floor. He was rushed to a local hospital and, against all odds, survived without serious injuries. Meanwhile, a grieving son had almost succeeded in avenging his father's death. What happens when a defendant is attacked by his own son during a trial? That's exactly what occurred in the case of Vashon Flowers, who was on trial for murder in Mosan County, Michigan, in May 2019. Flowers was accused of shooting and killing his wife, Jamie, at the couple's home in Mosan Heights after an argument over cigarettes. Initially, the two had argued for over a day until the police were called and separated them. Flowers left the residence but returned a few hours later, broke down the door, and fired 4 shots at Jamie. The 46-year-old man turned himself into the police and was formally charged with aggravated murder. During the trial, Jamie's daughter, Paris, who witnessed the crime, testified in court.
He got down on the ground and started choking my mother. Actually, I heard, "You don't have to do this, Vashon. Please don't do this. You don't have to do this." And then I heard gunshots. 4. I got up and I left out of the room. She was sitting straight up against the wall.
You observed some blood?
Yes, on her shirt. Gunshots, bullet holes in her shirt and blood.
But it was Jamie's son who decided to take justice into his own hands. During a hearing, 21-year-old London Jones was sitting in the gallery with his siblings when he suddenly jumped over the barrier and ran toward his mother's killer. The quick action of the security guards prevented him from reaching Flowers. The enraged son was restrained and removed from the courtroom. In the end, Vashon Flowers was convicted of Jamie's murder and sentenced to life in prison, while facing not only the justice system but also the fury of his own son. How does this compare to taking a punch from the victim's brother? That's exactly what happened to Jeffrey Clark, 33, who was accused of first-degree premeditated murder in Fraser, Michigan. On July 4, 2022, Clark chased down and executed 28-year-old Jer Robertson in the parking lot of an apartment complex. The brutality of the crime was described by the prosecution.
This was an execution. Just wasn't a murder, an execution. The man was pleading for his life.
A doorbell camera captured the moment Robertson was shot while desperately trying to flee. Clark was arrested after an ankle monitor he was wearing placed him at the crime scene. During the trial, the prosecution highlighted this evidence.
Your Honor, at the time, the defendant had a tether on his ankle. We do have the tether records that place him at that location at that time.
Clark's girlfriend also testified against him, stating that she was threatened after the crime.
He proceeded to tell me that he would kill me if I told on him. He told me exactly what he did to Mr. Robertson. He told me that Mr. Robertson begged for his life and that the only thing he was worried about was that he was on tether.
When the prosecution showed the footage of the murder to the judge and the victim's family, the courtroom descended into chaos. Sitting in the gallery, watching the video of his twin brother being killed, was Jerry Robertson. He couldn't hold back and lunged at the defendant, exchanging punches with Clark.
Man, they gonna see you.
The chaos escalated when Jerry also got into an argument with the defendant's father, who was outraged by the attack on his son.
You don't hit, you hit him. Man, he killed us.
After order was restored in the courtroom, Clark was convicted of first-degree murder, illegal possession of a firearm, and possession of a firearm as a convicted felon. His sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole, while facing not only the justice system but also the fury of the victim's brother. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you next time.